What's up, British? Your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to the episode of the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be in conversation with my next guest. You know, I love pulling back social constructs of all things food, art, music, film, and technology. And my next guest has this incredible series coming out on Hulu entitled The Next Thing That You Eat. And I got to be honest, I had the chance to look at one of the episodes. And the episode I chose had to do with AI. I know, audience, you're probably like, Mike Muse and AI, here we go again. Yes, I'm having another conversation about AI. Get into it. It is going to be the theme for the year. Ladies and gentlemen, dynamic, the incredible Michelin star chef, Mr. David Chang. What's happening, sir?
I'm so honored to be here, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yo, no, I'm so happy that you're here, man. So what you may or may not know about me is artificial intelligence is my jam. And so I'm a Google Tech Policy Fellow, and so I focus on AI, machine learning, and big data and how to use it for good. I'm currently developing our Artificial Intelligence Institute to study these type of phenomena and how AI is a benefit to society and how it helps. A buddy of mine who's a data scientist calls AI benevolent when it is used for good. And I love that you focused on AI on your first episode. Talk to me, and let's really talk to our audience about why you chose to set the tone, because you're serious about seismic shifts in food, but to set the tone with AI in relationship to food.
Because when you think about the future of food, at least when we were making it, the first thing that pops up is like Jetsons and Star Trek and just spacey type of things. And I felt, and Morgan felt, and the whole team felt that we had to talk about robotics and AI and the stories involved with that, because what we wanted to cover for sure are things that we know that are inevitabilities. I'm apprehensive to say guarantees, but like percentage chance is pretty high that AI, robotics, just all that universe is going to play a larger role in food. So, you know, it's probably the safest bet. If you're going to talk about the future, that's one of the reasons.
Yeah. And I think that was great because even technology is helping to reshape consumer behavior patterns, right? Think about the brick and mortar stores and Amazon and shopping. You know, David, during pre-pandemic, I used to be as progressive as I am. I'm still very conservative in a lot of areas in terms of like my way of being. And so I will still get the newspaper on Sundays and read the New York Times, right? Like I used to love going to the store and physically touching the items I'm looking at purchasing. And for food delivery, I never ordered out. It was always, I was going to the restaurant. So I never did Postmates pre. Then the pandemic came and the ease of technology, David, I don't see myself going back to who I used to be prior to. What, as a chef and as part of this show, like, how are you thinking about that in the sense of the benefits of technology when it comes to catching up with consumer behavior dynamics and changing of the patterns?
I think even before, you know, this answers that question in an indirect way. I think so much of the culinary world is allergic to technology, allergic to change. Cooking has to, you talked about being conservative and how you operate and the nature of how you eat. I think most people are super conservative, right? How you eat, and most of the people that cook want things over fire, want things, they don't want to take measurements. I'm like, you can make this better if you use grams. Like, just think about cooking right now. Almost all the recipes here in America are based on the imperial system.
Yeah.
It is not as good as the metric system. Like, what just shows you the stubbornness of the culinary industry. It's like, what? Yes. We're going to use a less precise measurement system? Even drug dealers, you know, it's when drug dealers use grams, like it's where the money is. It's more precise. So it's like
better profit margins.
It just gives you an idea of the stubbornness of change that how we eat, the whole universe of how we eat, has deeply embedded. And that was, I think, one of the things we wanted to tackle was how do you even talk about this change? How do you even get like a chef or someone that's a restaurant owner to think differently, to use data to their advantage instead of just using their gut and finding a way to marry those two things? And I look at the world in sports. right? It's like analytics versus just following your gut. I think it's good to do the eye test and the brain test simultaneously. And people need to understand that whether it's big data or like food delivery companies that are going to be able to more accurately predict what you want to eat on any given day, that is a good thing and a bad thing, you know. And part of what I wanted this show to be is to understand that contradiction and to have a conversation about it, right? Like, I don't think people want food to be harder to get, less accessible. If I have a ability to get a donut in 2 minutes, it's going to be really hard for me. Like a hot Krispy Kreme donut, like who doesn't like that? I can get hot French fries, I can get whatever more quickly. That's going to be hard to say no. Of course I want that, but the question we should be asking is that a good thing? How do we have this conversation about not that should we have this? Do we want the future? Do we want data? It's more of how do we better mitigate when it happens?
David, I love where we're going with this. And I think my audience is like smiling right now as we're talking about this, because I love this type of discourse, and in particular around getting people to understand technology in ways in which we use it all the time, right? And even to be applied for food. Like, I loved in the episode how you were just saying about how, you know, you will love a spring roll from one restaurant, and then you may love the mozzarella sticks from another restaurant, but you don't like the pizza from that restaurant, right? Like, that was me, I thought you were talking to, right? Because there's certain restaurants I go to where I do just like that one thing, right? And I don't want anything else but that one thing. And so there is that ease of what the technology does. And with the big data, the predictive analysis, or maybe what I may be in the mood for by historical pattern of Monday, the ease of convenience for me is beautiful, knowing that this app can predict what I want, my interests, and my ordering patterns and habits. You bring up, though, something really interesting now, is cause and effect. And that is what AI is. As beautiful and great as it is, there's always the other side to it, right? That could be good. You talk about it from perspective of there's a cost of convenience. And I talk about that when we talk about privacy and data sharing. Like, yo, you want your ride shares on demand, right? There's a cost to that.
Yeah.
What is the cost that you're talking about right now? And the example you just used about, you know, your hot donut, you know, right away, right? There's like costs associated with it. As we're thinking this through.
I mean, honestly, it all boils down to labor and like what you displace, right? And for me, it's
all right,
okay,
David Chang, now we're here.
if everyone starts buying donuts from a food truck that has figured out how to do it on demand, well, that's going to be one less donut from the donut shop on the corner that's been there 40 years, that may not have the capacity to move so quickly, not because they're not smart, it's because they're entrenched in the old ways and they want to change, but they can't, because you can't. There's so many reasons why you can't move faster. So all of a sudden, it's like you're now potentially putting that business out of danger. And this is a hard thing. And you could talk about the delivery workers, and that's a total clusterfuck, right? Like,
yeah.
Anything for the future of food with, I think, AI, technology, robotics, there's a lot of, again, this is my opinion, I don't understand a lot of it. I don't understand how it works necessarily, whatever. I think for me, there's a lot of issues, but the priority for me is you're replacing humans. Where are they going? What is happening? And for me, it is imperative that we start asking this question, because as a business owner, it's like, do I want a consistent machine that will do a job over and over and over again? Yeah, I'd love that. What, you know, will this machine allow me to better pay my current employees, give them above living wage, to make it so it's like amazing, everything in terms of the pay and the benefits, because this machine allows me to do that. It allows me to do it because now I'm hiring less people, right? So what happened? So it's like, it's good and bad simultaneously. Where do we go with that? And for me, I've seen this job. My father came to this country in 1963. If we had robotic dishwashers, I'm not here today.
Yeah.
So I'm not. So like the question I'm asking myself is, okay, not that we're not going to have robotic dishwashers. What else can we carve out to create jobs for immigrants or people that have no way of getting a job anywhere else? And I want the show to have that conversation. I don't know what the hell it's going to be.
Yeah. But I love though, David, about you and this kind of discourse that we're having is that you're willing to go there and you're willing to explore and you're willing to examine. But far too often, these topics, doesn't have to be about AI, about anything, sometimes can feel too big for people. And so if it feels too big, then they never explore it. But I think the way you get to the destination or to a solution is just by questioning and being willing to tackle. And so I'm really glad that you didn't take a back seat to these big ideas. And I think that's important. And I tell my audience too, whether you're engaging in policy or whatever the thing is like nothing isn't too big and we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, even someone who studies this, right? And so that's the point of studying it because no one has all the answers. I want to go to that example that you used about the machine and the robot cooking something. And I want to tie it back into the football analogies and the data, like the instinct, right? Like you have the data, but then you also do have an instinct regarding it, right? Recently, we saw this testimony from the Facebook whistleblower, and she mentioned that in order for Facebook, in order to weed out some of the bad actors and content, they're relying on machines right now, right? But the machines won't gather everything. Versus they relied on the people could understand the nuance of it, right? But there's a cost to hiring that large amount of people in human capital. Well, for you, when it comes to the idea of the robot making the food, as a chef with Michelin stars all behind your name, all behind your restaurants, a Mama Fugo chain I fucking love, can the robot replace the magic of David Chang, right? Or does it become too scientific, too measured?
I think that's a hot button subject, right? And again, I think I talked about it in an episode where I did meet a guy that was formerly like one of the top engineers at NASA, and he was so cocky to say like, I'm going to recreate your intuition, you know? And from his perspective, I can understand that. Like, that's his goal in life, is to recreate anybody's intuition. And this is all just zeros and ones. I get that. But between now and then, if that ever should happen, it's not going to happen in this lifetime. I mean, we are very, very far away. So instead of dreaming about what that might happen, let's just deal with what is possible now, right? And I think that one thing that we should look at is not put our heads in the sand and be like, well, if this is not going to happen, then I don't have to think about it or worry about it. I was like, well, actually, there's patterns that have happened in the past or currently that we can look and study and give us some insight to how we might react to that eventuality if that should happen. So one is like, I look at dishwashers, right? Like I think most restaurants have an automated dishwasher that does the work of 4 to 5 people. Nobody's asked like, God damn it, this stupid machine. No, we're thankful for this machine. The Roboku, the food processor, these are things that are wonderful, but think how many hours it's saved. We lose the human touch, but we haven't asked the questions like, is this good? Is this bad? We've just accepted it. And there are many things that we currently use that we don't think twice about. And I think that's what we can't predict the future, but we should start to ask, like, we can look at the things we've already assumed to be normal and say like, what happened there, right? And for me, I don't even think about the restaurant industry, right? Like, yes, we're pretty far away, I think. Again, I'm not the technologist expert here. There will be certain things, like they have the frying machine. That is, anything that's a binary move, yeah, that already happens, right? Yeah. We've already automated a lot of that. The next step will be doing that and so on and so forth. But I think we're very far away from finding a robot that will be affordable, that can move quickly. And even if you do have robots in the kitchen, you still need a human to operate and to be there. Yeah. So for me, I think that we should be studying the automotive industry. We should be studying Detroit, right? When you look at the factories today, it's not the Model T and Henry Ford just all, making some stupid car. It's a human, two robots with a robot arm, a human, and that's how it's working. For me, I want to ask is like, how much does that suck? Is that better? I don't know. I've never spoke to somebody that works at a Ford factory. Like, what are the pros and cons of this? This is what I wanted the show to be, is to start to ask like, hey, maybe this can connect the dots to elsewhere, because if I look at the automotive industry, I don't think it's been that great for automotive workers since things have been automated.
Yeah.
That's just me.
You're so right. I mean, I'm smiling because I'm like, dude, you don't even know me, but like you're speaking my entire language. Is that like we're homies? So I'm from Michigan, and so my whole family is the automotive industry. My first internship in college was at GM. I'm an engineer by degree, and so these are all the things that the automotive industry had to deal with. And so they dealt with future work before that term future work was what future work is. To what audience David is talking about future work relationship to the restaurant industry. It's a dishwasher when he referenced his father, right? Like his father, if future work was now, would be displaced, right? Because of future work. So future work, oftentimes AI creates a displacement. But I love how you went there with Detroit and the automotive industry, because it changed people's well-being. How people got into the middle class within Michigan and the manufacturing beltway was the automotive industry. The automotive industry used to give people the type of living that allowed them to get into the middle and upper middle class income and living. Now, those jobs are gone, right? Because of the way automation kind of took hold and a lot of those workers got displaced. So you're keying right in on that. And I think for you to even mention studying automotive industry or taking a visit to it, I think it will be very eye-opening for you, because David, I think the restaurant industry is, says a guy not in the restaurant business, right? But I see the conversation that is happening, and I see the different type of restaurants are trying to create these technology-based restaurants, and whether it's fast food, fast casual, like whatever the space is. And so I think people are going towards this. So the fact that you are who you are and bringing this conversation to the forefront, it just means that it needs to be taken serious, and we need to figure out that displacement, because I didn't even think about the migrant workers and those who come over, right, and the back of house, jobs, man.
Dude, there's so many topics you can start to unravel that, again, I'm not an expert in, but like you were talking about data and going to restaurants, we didn't really cover this in the show, but there will be a point where you're going to walk into a restaurant, they're going to have every detail about what you like. Yeah. You're left-handed, you like fizzy water, you like this wine. We're probably going to the reason why we can, this program will probably say, hey, this restaurant, you're going to be able to increase beverage sales by 20% if you take the chance to open a bottle of like 1992 Bordeaux, right? Before the customer even shows up. Because one of the issues with wine is you can't open wine unless it's been open like 5 hours ahead of time, right? That's a leap of faith to do. But it's like, well, you could probably put a probability and say, you know what, it's like 90% chance that this guest will do it. The other 10% is going to be with the right server. And then they'll probably be like, hey, when this server works with this customer, X amount of sales are higher. So let's just move this other server who's great to someone else. You know what I mean? Like everything is going to be this moving pattern. But again, great. As a diner, we're like, wow, this is amazing. Everything's great. But if you care about privacy, that data is going to be highly sought after about this customer that's a whale that buys all this stuff. Now, do I want to go to another restaurant and have that seamless experience? Yeah, then now your likes and dislikes are now shared all across the board. I think that's sort of scary and great simultaneously.
I know, it's both. Like, listen, you talk, I'm like smiling. I'm like, yes. When I walk in, have the Bordeaux, have a fizzy water, have our favorite server. Because David, you know what it is? I look at it as not, I'm gonna let you go. I look at it now as the government, society, corporations, whatever, they all know who I am, right? Like we share so much of our data. Heck, even going to CVS, they put out those long receipts are corresponding to things that we've already purchased, right? And now that CVS, the pharmacy is now, I believe, at Target. So now Target has a connection to CVS to get my data, right? And so like now Target knows who I am. So it's just, everyone knows who I am at this point. Right. So I might as well enjoy the convenience of it.
Mike, I'd love to tell me if I'm wrong here. Like for me, the next step is, okay, do I actually have any agency in my choices and decisions that I make if I'm constantly being marketed to a place where they know that I'm going to make this decision? And listen, like we have Lisa Joy and Jonah Nolan on the show, and like I think Westworld is great. There's amazing topics to discuss, but part of it is like we're not that far from that reality where somebody is actually telling us to do everything. We actually don't have agency. That scares me. I love it too, but it scares me.
That part is, and David, I am right there with you too as well. The fact that we may not have agency, although we believe that we have agency to make these choices were already predicted for us. It's very Minority Report, right? David, I'm gonna let you go. I swear to God, I love you. I hope we can be friends in real life one day in the future. Really quickly, this is kind of a little personal thing. I was out having drinks with a buddy of mine last night, who's a restaurant owner here in New York City, and he gave me this hypothesis. I'm just wondering, do you share the sentiment that the reason why restaurants right now are going so plant-based or having a lot of plant-based options is because it's cheaper to have plant-based options on the menu to increase your profits and your margins? I'm just curious, like, do you see, obviously plant-based food is good.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with him, but I think that might be a tertiary thing. The main reason is that's where the money's at.
That's it. That's it.
You know,
that's
and
it.
everything else wrapped around that is the story of marketing altruism. You know, but you know, and honestly, you have to almost be okay with that. If that's how we get to a more sustainable place, then fine. The end all is fine. The end result is a good thing.
David, I love you. David Chang. Audience, this has been David Chang. This has been one of the most fascinating conversations I've had in a while. As you can see, audience, there's a lot to unpack from this show that is premiering on Hulu right now as we speak. The things that we eat, right, David?
Next thing you eat.
Next thing you eat, yes, that's it. Please check it out on Hulu. It's streaming. You will not be disappointed. And I'm sure you and your friends will have these type of conversations at brunch after watching. David Chang, thank you so much for coming on the Mike Muse Show, man. I really appreciate it.
Mike, thank you for having me.